Thank you. My wife and I are absolutely delighted to be back here again. And thanks to all of you who have been great supporters of ours. You know, it's been really quite an amazing adventure because, you know, you listen to the pundits and the political experts and they say, oh, no, don't worry about Carson. There's nothing you have to worry about. He's a novice. He has no political experience, and he's insignificant. We don't even have to talk about him. But the interesting thing is they forgot about one very important thing, the people. They forgot about the people because, you know, in the last few months since we announced our exploratory committee, as of today, we have from the people over 200,000 new donations. And no one else can even come close to that. And it means that, yes, we do have resources, and it continues to come in, so that I don't feel a necessity to run after the, quote, big established money and lick anybody's boots. And, you know, because the thing that is so important right now is that we return this nation to the original thought. The original thought was this was supposed to be a country that was of, for, and by the people. The government was supposed to be there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we have turned that completely upside down now, and the thing that I think embodies that the most is the so-called Affordable Care Act. Because here you have the government saying, we don't care what you, the people, think. This is what we're doing. We're cramming it down your throat, and if you don't like it, too bad. That was never the intention. And it is really time for the people to take the government back. Now, many people have said, well, you're a doctor and you've had an illustrious career. Why would you sully everything in politics? And I ask myself that too. But you know, I spent my entire professional career looking out for the welfare of children and trying to give them a better life and quality life. And as I look at what's happening to our nation, I recognize that they will not have a quality life. And it is too big a risk to simply leave it to politics as usual. And therefore, that's the reason that I said to God after a lot of prayer, I said, Lord, you know I don't want to do this. But if you open the doors, I'll walk through them. If you close the doors, I'll gladly sit down. And he has continued to open door after door after door. And so I'll continue to walk through. Even though the professional pundits say, you can't do it because you're not a politician. I would say I can do it because I'm not a politician. Because nor do I ever want to be one. But you know, experience can actually come from a variety of different things. And you know, I've had a lot of lifetime experiences which I think are very useful. Experiences growing up in dire poverty and experiencing every socioeconomic level in our society. I think that's valuable experience because it helps you to be able to see a lot of things. Experience in ROTC, joining late and still being able to rise to the top and become the city executive officer in the city of Detroit. And getting a lot of marksmanship experience and becoming an expert marksman. That was a good thing. It's a good experience. And for those who think that I'm not a proponent of the Second Amendment, please read what I've written. You know, there's some people who willfully remain confused about a statement that I made very early on when I was dipping my toe into the political arena, and didn't realize that you always have to preface what you say with, yes, I believe in this, and this is the top, and you can't get rid of that. So that when I said, you know, I don't want dangerous weapons to fall in the hands of crazy people in densely populated areas where they can do a lot of damage, without saying, but you can never subject that to the Second Amendment. And a lot of people say, well, he doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. He doesn't think people should have guns in the city. What a bunch of crap. You know, you know, once and for all, you know, the Second Amendment is there for two very important reasons. First of all, so that the people can aid the military in case of an invasion. But secondly, and more importantly, so the people can protect themselves against a tyrannical government. That's important. But the fact of the matter is, ordinary people, citizens, can have all kinds of experiences. You know, as a surgeon, you know, I had an opportunity to put together some amazing teams of people to accomplish things that had never been done before. And for those who happen to have spent their lives, you know, pushing papers around and trying to get reelected, to think that that is better life experience when it comes to solving problems, that they have the best experience, I think it's a suspension of intellectual activity to believe something like that. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough to be able to spend decades sitting on corporate boards, learning both national and international business, and having an opportunity to see what something that functions efficiently looks like. So therefore, I know that our government does not look good. It does not function well. And people say to me, but you haven't had experience dealing with all of this dysfunction. You know what I've had experience dealing with? The Constitution of the United States. That's the way we need it to look. We don't need it to look dysfunctional. And when you know what the Constitution looks like, then you can begin to push for the right kinds of things. For instance, separation of powers. A very important part of the way that this country was put together. And the reason we have separation of powers is if one of the three branches gets a little bit too big for its britches, the other ones can bring them back. And some people think that the Supreme Court is the end-all of everything. But guess what? It is not. Because the Congress makes the laws in our land. And they have the ability to create and make a law to negate something that the Supreme Court did if it is not something that serves the purpose of the people, because we have a representative government. Congress represents the people. The Supreme Court does not. We have to understand that. At any rate, you know, when I look at what's going on in our country right now and what will happen to our young people in the future, one of the things that is most disturbing is the divisiveness that is going on. And people have successfully, the purveyors of division and hatred have successfully cast a lot of the arguments as Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal, when in fact they're pro-American versus anti-American. And we have to really start looking at that. And we cannot allow them to continue to divide us. because we, the people of the United States, are not each other's enemies. So we need not pay attention to those who would have you believe that there is a war on women. There's no war on women. And that every incident that involves people of different races, there's a new race war going on. And income wars, always class warfare, age wars, religious wars. They want us to fight each other. This is the last time that we should be thinking about fighting each other, when we have people outside, radical Islamic jihadists who want to destroy us. Why would we be helping them by destroying ourselves? That makes absolutely no sense. And then we have to think about the financial problems that we're having. $18.4 trillion national debt. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of money. And just to put it in perspective, if you tried to pay that back at a rate of $10 million a day, 365 days a year, it would take you over 5,000 years. And that's what we're putting on the backs of our children and our grandchildren. But that's the good news. That's the good news. Because if somebody gave us a check today for $18.4 trillion and we paid it off, some people would be dancing in the streets, we're debt free. Wrong. Because there is something called the fiscal gap. Make sure you read about that when you get home tonight. The fiscal gap. See, that is the unfunded liabilities owed by our government, which we don't put on the books, by the way. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, departmental programs, all these things unfunded, versus the revenues that are expected from taxes and other things. The two numbers should align. They should be roughly the same as it is in your home, in terms of your checkbook. But when they don't align, there's a gap. That's the fiscal gap. Today, it sits at $211 trillion. That is a staggering number. It is unsustainable. The only reason we can sustain it to the degree that we do is because our currency is the reserve currency of the world, which gives us the right to print money. That's a privilege that generally goes with the number one economy in the world, which ours was from the 1870s until last year, when China took over that spot. There is already a movement afoot to remove our money as the reserve currency of the world. What will happen with that level of debt? Think about it. It'll make the Great Depression look like a walk in the park. And therefore, we have to be smart enough to do something about it before that happens. And we can do something about it before it happens. But first, we must acknowledge that is a problem. The reason you don't hear that from politicians is because it's so scary, and they want to be reelected. But since I'm not a politician, I can tell you, this is scary. It's scary stuff. And I 100% believe that there's something that we can do about it, because there are others who have done things about it, like Italy. They had to raise the retirement age and cut the retirement pensions by 40%, but they did it, and it put them back on the right course. But I can tell you, the longer you allow it to grow, the deeper the pain, the more difficult it will be to fix it. And we do have the ability to fix it. We have the most powerful and dynamic economic engine the world has ever seen in this country. All we have to do is let it loose and create an environment that encourages entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment. We got a lot of money sitting on the sidelines waiting for the right kind of environment, and it will take off. And we can give it a jump start by just doing some intelligent things. For instance, there's over $2 trillion sitting overseas because American corporations don't want to bring it back because we have the highest corporate tax rates in the developed world. Why would they bring it back? You know, in my days on the Kellogg board, Costco board, I can remember many times us sitting around the board tables talking about what are we going to do with this money overseas? Because bringing it back doesn't make any sense and having it taxed at 35%. Well, here's how we get a real good stimulus. Remember the big stimulus they were talking about at the beginning of the Obama administration that cost the taxpayers $1 trillion and nobody knows what happened to it? Well, I'm not talking about that kind of stimulus. I'm talking about a real stimulus that cost us not one penny by a 6-month hiatus on corporate taxes to allow that money to be brought back into this country. And the only stipulation that I would make is that 10% of it had to be utilized to create jobs for people who are unemployed and on welfare and job research. That kind of thing would make a huge difference and get things moving in the right direction. And it also goes back to something I think is so important for us as a society. We must learn to invest in each other. And, you look at Muhammad Yunus, who won a Nobel Prize in 2006 for his micro-lending program, lifted millions of people out of poverty in that part of the world, Bangladesh. And 97+% of those people have paid those loans back. Think about what that could do in this country if we learn how to invest in our people, because what we want is programs that allow people to crawl out of the hole of dependency and climb the ladder of American success and become part of the fabric of America. Additionally, we have to lower that corporate tax rate, at least commensurate with everybody else, probably a little lower to draw things back in here. We have to get rid of the unnecessary regulations. We have way too many regulations around everything. And we do need some regulations. You know, our founders said that if men were angels, no government or regulations would be needed. But we know that men are not angels, and neither are women. So, so consequently, just in case there are any Hillary supporters, but clearly we have to have some, but not what we have, and we need a tax structure that is fair, that is flat, and that doesn't allow politicians to raise taxes on anybody, much less everybody. And I could go on for a very long time because I got a gazillion things that I feel need to be done to get our government working efficiently again, to get it to run like a business as opposed to this gigantic, inefficient behemoth that it has become. And that can and will be done. But one of the last things I want to talk about that we must do is we must take a leadership role on the world stage. Because if we vacate that role, somebody else gets into that role. And right now, you have radical Islamic jihadists who want to destroy us and our way of life. And we have two choices. We can sit around and bomb the desert and act like, that we're doing something while they continue to grow, metastasize, and threaten us, or we can destroy them first. I go for the second option, quite frankly. But all of these things will require courage. And we have to think about the people who preceded us, people who were willing to give their fortunes, who were willing to give their lives so that we could live in freedom. And now we must use our influence. Everybody has a sphere of influence. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family members. Get them registered to vote. Help them to understand what the principles are. Because what we must recognize is that freedom is not free. You must fight for it every day. Thank you very much.
Ben Carson, Detroit's own, America's own, man of the hour, Ben Carson. And now welcome back Byron York for a conversation with Dr. Carson.
They like you.
I like them.
Thanks so much for coming.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate your being here. And I'm going to ask a number of questions. I thought we might start with something I've been asking everybody, which is about the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage. And after it was announced, you said that Americans must realize that it is now the law of the land, but that the government must never force Christians to violate their religious beliefs. So, you must know that there's going to be a wave of litigation coming as Christian schools, adoption agencies, and other institutions are sued to try to force them to accept gay marriage. And the question is, what would you do to help them?
Well, first of all, let me just state right off the bat that I have nothing against gay people. And, they're welcome. They're welcome to have free association like anybody else. And they're protected by the Constitution like everybody else. However, like everybody else, they don't get extra rights, and they don't get to change everything for everybody else. Having said that, and I think that's what we have to encourage our Congress to recognize, that over the last few elections, we, the people, have sent many of them there not to be spectators of the executive branch and the Supreme Court, but to recognize that they have a responsibility to create the right kind of legislation. And that's what I would be encouraging them.
And so what can a president do to help in this, defend what's called religious liberty for all these institutions?
Well, I think, first of all, you can use the bully pulpit so that instead of inflaming the situation, you actually shine the light on the situations where that's occurring. And we also can apply all kinds of economic pressures in the right way, because this is a country that is Judeo-Christian in its origin, even though the president doesn't think so. But we're the ones who get to decide what kind of nation it is. And that means making absolutely sure that we shine the light any time that there is a group that is bullying somebody who has a legitimate religious conviction and trying to make them change that function.
All right, let's move on to the other Supreme Court decision on Obamacare. And as a physician, you have special insight into this. And you said after that ruling, you said that you would work even harder to repeal Obamacare. But repealing Obamacare doesn't take us back to 2009. It has existed for a while. The insurance industry has changed the way it does business. Exchanges exist. Subsidies are being paid. You can't actually go back to 2009. So the question is, how would you get us from where we are today to some better place?
Okay, well, I never like to complain about anything without having a solution. And what I would do is make another system available that is based on health savings accounts, that people would have from the day that they are born until the day they die. And when they die, they can pass it on. And we pay for it with the same dollars that we pay for the system now, except that we wouldn't have to use quite as many of them. You give people the ability to shift money within their HSA, within their family. So if mom is $500 short for a special mammogram, her husband can give it to him, hers, or uncle, or cousin, or niece. Anybody in the family makes every family their own insurance company, gives you enormous flexibility to cover almost anything that comes up. And the cost of your catastrophic insurance drops precipitously because nothing's coming out of it except catastrophic insurance, like a homeowner's policy with a large deductible versus a homeowner's policy with no deductible. Two completely different animals, and you make it possible to buy it across state lines, which drives the price down even further. And that takes care of 75% of the people. It doesn't take care of the indigent. How do you take care of them? How do we take care of them now? With Medicaid. And what's the annual Medicaid budget? $400 to $500 billion a year. How many people participate? About 80 million. 80 million into 400 billion goes 5,000 times. What could you buy with $5,000 per person? Concierge practices cost $2,000 to $3,000 a year. We can put them all in the concierge practice and still have thousands left over for catastrophic insurance. I'm not suggesting we do that. That's how much money there is. If we use it efficiently, it works. And some of the people in Washington would say, you can't do that because those people are too stupid and they won't know how to manage a health savings account. But they say that about everybody because they think everybody is like them. But the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is, they said that about food stamps. They said you can't give them food stamps because they'll go out and buy porterhouse steak the first 5 days and be starving the rest of the month, but they didn't. They learned how to spread it out. They would do the same thing with health savings accounts. They would learn how to be responsible, and anything that the government sponsors or advises should lead people to develop a sense of personal responsibility and not dependency.
Let's move on to one other issue. Do you think that your fellow Republican candidates, yourself accepted, were slow to realize the true import and the nature of the Charleston shootings? And why was that?
Well, I think people are so hypersensitive today, and they're afraid to make a mistake because they'll be, beaten up so badly in the media for it. But the way I kind of look at it is I'm never going to have my finger up in the air seeing which way the wind is blowing. So what people hear from me is what I actually think, and let the chips fall where they may, because quite frankly, I wouldn't want to be elected under false pretenses. That's a lose-lose situation. That'd be a loss for me and it'd be a loss for the people.
We're going to move on actually to one more thing. I've asked, I believe, all of the candidates this questions about immigration, and not about any specific policy, but about the number of immigrants who come into the United States every year. And Gallup has asked this question for years and years, and I just read the actual question, which is, in your view, should immigration be kept at its present level, increased, or decreased? You're sitting at home, the phone rings, and you're asked that question. What's your answer?
Well, I have no problem with immigration at the levels where it is, as long as we get to choose who's immigrating here. I have a real problem with illegal immigration. And I think it's pretty easy to fix that by sealing all of the borders, north, south, east, west. It doesn't have to be with a fence. We're very sophisticated now. We have electronic surveillance, we have drones, we have a number of things that we can utilize. And then you turn off the spigot that dispenses all the goodies. There won't be any reason for people to try to come here, make all the difference in the world. Now, having said that, I also have a good plan for the 11 million that are still here, but I probably don't have time for that. But having said that, I want to say that we are a compassionate people, and we give billions of dollars in aid to lots of places. I would stop doing that, quite frankly, because we don't have the money anymore. But what we do have is a lot of companies and corporations, like right now what's going on in Cameroon, in Africa, who go over there, help develop the millions of acres of fertile land. They benefit because, they're getting profit from it, but they're also helping to build the infrastructure and jobs and opportunities for people there. We can do that in Honduras and El Salvador and all these other places. With our companies doing the investing, not our government doing the investing, they become our friends and our allies, and we stop bankrupting ourselves.
Last question. clearly a lot of your appeal is that you're not a politician. You have never held elective office, haven't run for elective office. The first elective office you decided to run for is President of the United States. In your book, Gifted Hands, you say that you believe God gave you a special gift to be able to be a surgeon, a special coordination between your hands and eyes, a special insight into doing that. Do you believe that He's given you also a gift to be President of the United States?
Well, I think the people will make that decision. That's the key. And, you know, one of the wonderful things about the system that we have is you have an opportunity to be out there with all the, quote, political experts, and the people will be able to hear what I have to say, and they'll be able to hear what they have to say. And they will be able to make the decision. If it were up to the political experts, of course not. I would have no chance. But if it's up to the people, and our government was really designed for the people, not for a political class. And I think we'll find out what the people decide.
All right, Dr. Ben Carson, thank you very, very much.
All right. Thank you.